We are already in a Cold War. The Americans are saying to the Russians, look, come to our side and let's split the world together. The Chinese need just 5 more years to probably surpass the United States in technology, in military development. The Putin and Medvedev have been trying to communicate to the Americans, what you guys are doing is pushing us over the edge. And the only reply they get, screw you, get pushed over the edge. Like, this is a problem. So I don't know if this is really well thought, Trump's strategy.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to I3 Pulse. Has Trump's drastic decision of moving nuclear submarines towards Russia kickstarted World War III? And is Trump's threats to India moving them away into the arms of China and Russia? And is China quietly winning while America is spiraling? Today on I3 Pulse. And just a reminder, most of you are not subscribers to this channel. So make sure you pause right now, you subscribe, continue watching till the end. We promise to continue delivering quality content. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. How's it going? Lots of things have been happening. Just to give a quick recap and then ask you a question to get your thoughts on all this craziness happening in the world. So Trump actually gave an ultimatum to Vladimir Putin of Russia to stop the war in Ukraine by this Friday. And the former president of Russia, Dimitry Medvedev, went on Twitter and started going after Trump and accused them of saying and said, each new ultimatum, and I quote, is a threat and a step towards war. Now, Trump fired back online by moving 2 nuclear submarines closer to Russia and potentially reintroducing nuclear missiles to Europe for the first time since the Cold War. So, Sheikh, like, did this Twitter fight between Trump and Medvedev just bring us close to the edge of a nuclear showdown?
I mean, definitely not. Definitely not. I mean, nobody takes these Twitters or these tweets seriously, right? So, but that being said, there's something behind it, right? Like, I think each side is trying to trigger the other side. I think what I hear is the Russians trying to tell America what you're doing is reckless. But Trump is not listening. Neither did Biden, right? So the Putin and Medvedev and the whole Russian, let's say, bureaucracy have been trying to communicate to the Americans, what you guys are doing is pushing us over the edge. And the only reply they get, screw you, get pushed over the edge. Like, this is a problem. So what is this going to lead? I have no idea. I hope no, like, I would at least hope that no accident happens that triggers something way bigger than what they both intend. I don't think either side intends really war. But Trump wants to basically keep the pressure on the Putin government and the Putin administration. And I think the Americans want that administration to implode. Maybe when Putin dies, let's say, there'll be a vacuum of who takes over, and then that's the right time for the CIA to help their agents within the Russian Federation to push back and so forth. But for now, Putin has a very iron, firm grip, and the imploding is far-fetched as of now.
So, Sheikh, in terms of Russia had an interesting response to this, right? It kind of confused me. In response to this, Russia said it won't abide by the 1987 INF treaty this week. So that's the agreement that banned the short-range and medium-range nuclear missiles in Europe. Yeah. But this treaty, the funny part, it's been defunct since 2019. So it's kind of making Russia look a little bit weak. So why is Russia making this announcement? Are they trying to signal for war? Like, what's really going on here? Yeah,
signaling. But see, this treaty doesn't have to do with the United States. It has to do with short and medium range ballistic nuclear missiles towards Europe. So again, the pressure is on Europe, and that's what I'm saying. At the end of the day, the Europeans are caught between both. The United States is utilizing the Russians to keep the Europeans on their side, but within a specific limitation. And they're using it very well. You saw the negotiation that happened with the Europeans recently, with the EU recently. So that's the problem, basically. The Russians don't want a strong Europe. The Americans don't want a strong Europe. And the Europeans don't want a strong Europe either.
Okay, Sheikh, tell me why. How's that even possible?
So, well, it's like, I'm just being sarcastic because the Europeans have been really conflicted themselves. First, Britain exited the EU. Then you have, Hungary, for example, basically, and maybe Serbia. A little bit sometimes they're pro-Russian because of the Slavic ethnicity. You have the Polish, who are always been like more pro-American, because America's been like giving them all the support from a weapons perspective and whatever. So that's this, and there's others also. Sometimes Italy basically kind of sometimes sides with the United States, sometimes due to pressure, sometimes due to interest. The Europeans are not one integrated whole, and that's why they're weak. You see what I'm saying?
But now, what does the U.S. want in this situation, right? Because Trump set a deadline on Russia. Like, what does he want? Because in previous episodes, you mentioned that actually it's in the benefit of the U.S. to keep the war in Ukraine continuing to weaken Russia. So why all of a sudden now, why is the U.S. changing their stance?
Well, hold on. So this was the Biden administration's stance, and it worked very well. And the idea was to basically, get Russia in trouble and exhaust them economically and even from a demographic perspective and militarily but most importantly economically, to keep this war perpetuating keeps Russia in a state of flux, and that's how they're trying to basically crush it away from China. So now Trump. See, what we didn't know until now, what was the discussion between the Russians and the Americans in Saudi Arabia? Okay, so that what we know is that was inconclusive. It did not reach. They didn't reach an understanding. And that means the United States asked for certain things that the Russian rejected. So this whole thing could basically, the whole demands that have been happening or happened already are covered under this whole piece, right? And I believe the one who wants to stop the war and stop the funding is the Russians, not the Americans. The Americans are saying, well, we'll give you peace, right? But you need to give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And Putin said no.
So what does that peace entail then? Like, what are the things that America would get out of Russia in that situation?
Well, that's what I'm saying. This is what we don't know exactly. But it has to do with something other than Ukraine. And probably has to do something with the Chinese. And it's not like that. It's not like basically Russians beating China. It's like, so it seems, I would say maybe the Americans are saying to the Russians, look, come to our side and let's split the world together. You hate the Europeans. We're okay to basically throw Europe on the side. No problem. But we hate the Chinese. Help us basically against them. And this is basically where the Russians, I don't think they're budging. Okay? Because if the Americans want peace in Ukraine, it's the keys in their hand. They could easily basically stop all the support from the Ukrainians, and create some sort of an agreement, basically like force Zelensky and his government to accept certain things, right? And that's why again when Trump is speaking about the peace in Ukraine. He doesn't care about that. He's saying, look, you want peace? I want peace too. Here you go. Take the peace. Accept the peace. You want the peace? Take the peace. But this is the price. The Russians are not budging.
So historically, the Americans, and Trump mentioned this himself, right? That they would hit them with sanctions. And then the Russians, and Trump mentioned, avoided them quite skillfully. Now, is this now the situation where America's changing its approach this time and now adopting more drastic measures, as we're seeing from Trump's rhetoric?
Yeah, so this is the next step. The next step is to basically more isolation. Now we're going back to the Biden strategy.
So U-turn, huh? Like Trump is like...
No U-turn. It's just basically like, look, you need to understand basically the policy in the United States is continuous. It's not like basically one president comes and changes it. And we've said that many times. Yeah. People need to understand how the strategy formulation in the United States happens. There's always continuity. Okay, but rarely you have full reversals. Sometimes you might have change of tactics that are actually part of the plan, like this one. I believe what Trump did is exactly part of the plan that the State Department have put years before Trump came back to office. That Biden's going to basically put enough pressure to create a thirst for a deal. Trump comes in, hey, you guys I'm the deal person. You want deal, you want peace, here you go. But the Russians knew that. I believe the Russians already knew all that. And they're not budging for that. Again, a Sino-Russian alliance is strategic for both China and Russia. It's not like you don't need like somebody to teach them that. It's very important. The question: can the United States create an offer that outweighs this strategic alliance for one of them, specifically the Russians? Can they create enough pain and pull, right, to change that? I don't think so. That's why now they're using the oil weapon against the Russians from India, because India has been purchasing lots of oil after the embargo. So now Trump wants to cut that pipeline.
So, Sheikh, just before we transition over to India, because I have a few questions on that. Last week on our episode, you mentioned we spoke about Trump's deal with the European Union, right, where he forced them to buy the gas from the U.S., effectively cutting Russia from Europe. Is this one of the levers that Trump was potentially using to pressure Russia?
So definitely the United States basically now denied the Russians fully the European market, right? It's 100%. There's an agreement now. It's even more stressed. But and the Russians, where are they going to sell their oil to? Really, they're the biggest two customers is China and India. China is going to continue to buy Russian oil, but can China now? But India now is pressured to stop. Otherwise, the Americans are going to crush its exports to the United States, to itself.
And where do you see that going? Like with America's threats to India?
No, I think it's going to happen. I think India now needs to adjust and just follow U.S. rule, really, because I don't think they have much choice. Like, don't forget, India is now being primed to become the second China to the United States, right? Lots of manufacturing is going to India, blah, blah. So, and India is not like China. It's not an independent country. We need to understand that. You see what I'm saying? So it will happen. The question is basically, what is the Russians going to do about it? Is China going to now buy more Russian oil? What's going to happen with that is that the Chinese will be way more under the mercy of the Russians in the future, because the Chinese have to diversify their energy import strategy. So the Chinese buy the most from the Russians, and then the Russians export the most to China, right? But India India actually says India more, but at least there's conflicting numbers. But it seems India is number one, China's number two. But again, they're top two customers.
Yeah.
So yeah, if the United States succeeds in blocking India from purchasing Russian oil, that's going to be it's going to be a very strong blow to the Russian economy, because Russia now is living on just exporting fossil fuels.
So if India does not get their oil from Russia, right, who will they be getting it from?
The Middle East is there.
And will it be something more expensive for India, like from that perspective, or is it going to be just as similar as getting it from Russia?
No, it might be more expensive. Yeah.
So now India is being, pushed now, as you said, right, to buy oil and really get more oil and energy from countries that will be a bit more expensive. And we know India is a key member of BRICS. It has strong trade ties to Russia.
Well, we already spoke about this. Like the Indians are being ejected from BRICS. Like, they're just the Chinese and the Russians know that India is a U.S. ally. Okay, saying ally is too nice. Yeah. But let's talk about the energy policy. Like, I want to. So right now, if India stops buying from the Russians, okay, and they go buy from the Arabs, let's say. What could happen is basically the Chinese are already buying lots from the Arabs, from the Arab states, right? From the Gulf states. So they'll just switch. So instead of India getting the oil from cheaper oil from Russia, they'll just buy the expensive oil from the Gulf, and the Chinese will buy less from the Gulf and buy cheaper Russian oil. So if China wants, it can literally neutralize this Trump maneuver. It's like the same number of barrels, because China is buying lots from the Gulf. Yeah. Right. So let's say it's like 1 million barrel, just for the sake of the argument. Right? So you take from 1 million from here, you buy it from here, and just people switch. Done. Nothing happens really. Yep. But the only thing that happens is basically now India has less leverage on Russia in any type of negotiation because it's not buying their oil. Right. And number two, basically, the Russians have a little bit more leverage over China, or the other way around, to be honest. Because as long as the Arab state would export oil to China, it's fine. But, but see, it also could get the Chinese and the Russians closer together. So I don't know if this is really well thought Trump strategy. From the outside, you might think, okay, well, he's pressuring the Russians. But to be honest, basically, what you're doing is right now, if China makes the right move, they're getting closer together with the Russians.
So, Sheikh, you mentioned how Trump is making a lot of decisions that seem short-sighted, right? It could put the two enemies as biggest threats together as one alliance. But I'm looking at what Trump is doing with India, right? Could it not, all this pressure, is it really sustainable on India? And could it not just push India into the arms of Russia and China?
No. You need to understand, basically, India is a product of the post-colonial era, right? Like it's not like China or Russia. These are independent countries. These are world powers. What is India, right? Like, bro, Pakistan smashed India just like a couple of weeks ago, and it's just like Pakistan's almost a failed state. India is nothing. Okay, it's just like, from a power perspective, it's nothing. Japan is stronger than India. Germany is stronger than India. You know what I'm saying? Italy is stronger than India from that perspective. It's not a country that basically, I mean, it has some weight, sure. I'm just saying you can't compare it. The United States has India, by the horns. And that's from a political perspective, and from an economic need perspective. Because India, if India wants to grow to become a real regional power and let's say a real world power, they need to rely on the United States. So I don't see them having a choice. So let's see if they're going to push back or not. But I don't believe that this will happen. They'll have to comply.
Now, speaking of Pakistan, we saw just in June, right? Trump met with Pakistan's General Asim Munir in June. And the U.S. has a deal with Pakistan for cryptocurrency, reduced the tariffs on Pakistan to 19%, so much below what India is facing. What does this mean for the Pakistani-U.S. relationship? Like, will we see Pakistan being positioned to grow further a little bit, to be maybe a bulwark against India, and will the U.S. support
against
them?
India?
Yeah.
No. No. Like the Pakistanis will never go. Like the American strategy is to have India and Pakistan together. They don't want like a competing India-Pakistan, unless they want to create a regional nuclear war beside the Chinese. But nothing like in the foreseeable future for now.
So, Sheikh, you mentioned that the U.S. does not want India and Pakistan to be against each other, but. How could India and Pakistan really be together, especially with all this problems and issues and fights and scuffles every few years? There's always a problem. There's always
not really. That's not really. To be honest, look, the United States have de-escalated and forced the Pakistani leadership to let go of their vital interests, which is Kashmir and not to see India as a threat. This is even basically in some of the books of the Foreign Service Department members. So either it's some of the think tanks, or even basically some of the memoirs of Foreign Service personnel that served in either India or Pakistan.
So, Sheikh, going to China, right? While Trump is fueling chaos with Russia, right, and it's leveraging and pushing being very aggressive with a lot of countries right now. How is China positioning itself as that rational alternative to Americans' instability? I saw actually recently Xi Jinping is quoted to have said that we work to advise reconciliation, we encourage negotiations, he's talking about Gaza and the Middle East, but we do not appoint agents. We make efforts to form a circle of friends for the Belt and Road Initiative that covers everyone. It seems like China is kind of offering a different strategy than the U.S. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Look, the Chinese right now are not yet positioned to influence world politics yet. These are just words. They haven't been able to do much, really. The Chinese is fully focused on being able to build a strong military strategy, build a strong economy where they can withstand the chokehold of the Americans and survive. If they do, they come out victorious. Okay, so yeah, I mean, right now the Chinese are just trying to maintain their power without cracking, and that's a big thing because like taking on the American empire is not simple. Because the United States have set to China as the number one threat, strategic threat, right? And it is, right? If the Chinese dominates and creates independent markets and bit by bit pushes on to make the dollar, at least sidelines the dollar from at least an area in the world, or either within like some aspect of the world trade, this is a big deal. You see what I'm saying? So the Chinese are focused.
Right now, the Chinese have that Belt and Road Initiative. There's a CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Is their strategy to build more? Because they're maintaining, but they're also expanding in a sense, not militarily, but economically, right? How are they doing that right now, Sheikh? And how do you see them in the future potentially? Could they use that to kick the U.S. out of certain areas? For example, now Russia's kicking out the French in certain parts of Africa. Could China gain influence economically, build up its military in the future, then start pushing the U.S. out of certain areas in the world? Where do you see that potentially going? Yes.
Well, it's bit by bit. As I'm saying, the more the Chinese basically builds friendships and can compete and become competitive in world trade and build bilateral and multilateral agreements for economic purposes, the more the Chinese going to basically become more influential. Right now, it's a game of markets, and that's why it's all about tariffs and who buys from who. Right, the whole thing that Trump's came with is that who's going to buy from who. You buy from here. Well, I'm going to put tariffs, so you have to choose. Basically, the Americans with tariffs are telling them choose either us or the Chinese, us or in this case the Russians. That's how it works. Really, it's the whole Cold War right now is happening. We are already in a Cold War. So I don't know why people say we will be. We are in a Cold War already. Okay, and this Cold War is basically very economical in nature, yeah. So let's see what's the Chinese going to be able to do.
It seems tough, right? Because the U.S. can just leverage a country and use military threats, right? China's not at the point where a country can fully lean on them from a military perspective, right? So how can China really really change the tides in the future without giving those security guarantees? Because at the end of the day, security is the number one thing, the economy, but also security.
Yeah, but don't forget, like a strong military is based upon a strong economy. So the Chinese need just 5 more years to probably surpass the United States in technology and in military development, or at least become par. They become par with the military development or military capability, and surpass them within technological prowess. And those two things, basically, as you said, those two things, with the military plus the technological prowess, will give them an edge from an economic perspective. And the stronger the army is, the stronger their economic reach would be, because they will be able to, open markets and let's say sometimes by force, sometimes by enabling others to push back on the United States, for example, or U.S. proxies in certain cases. So yeah, I mean, that's why I think the Chinese are still patient, because they just need a few more years to reach that on par level on a military level, and even surpass the United States from a technological level. Those are the main things that secures a country, and then the economic progress will follow through.
These are crazy times, Sheikh, and really drawing this podcast to a close. We're seeing on one hand, right, the aggressive U.S. foreign policy, right, ego, emotion, a little bit with Trump, but economic self-interest as well, making big moves. And then China on the other side, quietly making moves, building itself to eventually reshape the world. Really want to understand, what opportunities does this present for the Muslim world in the next few years?
Well, to be honest, the Muslim world needs to decide for itself. We have 57, 58 Muslim majority countries. Each country needs to decide, am I going to continue to be a proxy, or am I going to become an independent country? Am I going to focus on my own national interest and national development? Or am I going to just continue to fulfill the interest of world powers? So these are the questions that Muslim countries have. And sadly, lots of the leadership of the Muslim world don't believe they have a choice. And that's because of lack of ambition. Huh?
But do they even have a choice?
Oh, definitely they have a choice. Like starting with the integration of the Muslim world, even from an economic perspective, and focusing on technological advancements. Some of these countries, you don't understand, they sabotage their own, their own technological infrastructure. So they sabotage their own, even their own population that tries to become more capable and creative and so forth. They don't want creativity. They don't want thinkers. See, they're because most of the Muslim world have despotic regimes. They fear creativity. They fear thinking. They fear ingenuity and innovation because such people ask questions. So if somebody's smart, they're going to sabotage. They don't want anybody smart. They don't. If you're smart, either just go to the West or just do nothing.
All right, so it's eliminating all the threats to their own regime, but while doing that, it's like you don't have a country anymore, really.
Oh, they're losing powers themselves, definitely. Yeah.
But Sheikh, I guess tell me more about this piece, right? Like, because I know you said that they do have choice, but like, for example, India has no choice, and might be, Pakistan right now is not at that level yet. Like, how can they really have a choice? Or maybe a better question, how can they position themselves to the point where they can make better moves for themselves?
Well, I think first and foremost, they need to clean up the agents in these countries. Okay, they have to do that. They need to basically cut off the influence of some of these embassies and start investing in their own people. Because the strength of a country is based upon the strength of the people. If you have an educated population, if you have a strong population, if you have a healthy population, you're going to have a stronger economy, stronger country, stronger, national unity. If there's some form of justice, if all what they do is they spread corruption, for example, one of the things they could do is just basically just be just.
And people will not leave. Lots of people leave because of this issue. They don't have opportunities. It's not just. They rather come to another country.
That's it. Just be a little bit just at least. You know what I'm saying? And enable people to build businesses and to become entrepreneurial and push for science and technology and innovation and invest in some of that. You see what I'm saying? Like none of that's happening. None of that. We're not here asking for anything other than just human development. We're just saying basically, take care of these countries that you're the head of, at least make them a little bit more viable, more stronger nations. You're gonna be happier. You're gonna be on top of a bigger nation, a greater nation. You see what I'm saying? So there is a choice. Okay, nothing happens overnight, but people need to have a long-term strategy.
You're right, Sheikh. Right. One way is just complete decline, and then the other way is thinking bigger and building a future. So, Sheikh, it's always good to, ask you questions about what's happening in the world and really understand and where the Muslim world fits in all this. And everybody, if you didn't subscribe yet, subscribe now. Make sure you like, comment, and share these videos. And we'll see you on the next episode of i3 Pulse. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh.